You're listening to The Play Pouch. Welcome once again. In case you haven't noticed, it's horror season, and we thought we'd give you our top 5 horror games. So we thought we'd kidnap you, strap you down, and force you to listen to our incessant ramblings. Now, before we begin, I should say that we have a third member of our crew that is supposed to be joining us at some point, but he neither has a decent mic or a decent internet connection. So Alan will be joining us as soon as he is able to. I dare say that he would have loved to have joined us on this episode, being that he is a horror connoisseur. If you've listened to our best movies of the 80s podcasts over on my sister channel, Stockbridge Works, link in description below, then you'll know how much of a fan he is of horror movies. Now, he's not so much of a fan of horror games, but
Definitely not.
I dare say that he would have liked to have chipped in. So we're really sorry about that, Al. But there's always next year. Okay. All right.
And before we start, Pete, we should just say that I am a big horror fan of films. You much less so. That's fair to
Yes.
say, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I don't like gory,
Yeah.
unnecessarily violent horror films. I'm looking at you, Funny Games.
Yeah. So that's
So
just where they're coming from. I am a big horror fan, film
yeah,
wise, and Pete not so much. So a little bit different perspectives there.
yes. All right, so I'll kick off. The way we're going to do it is that we're each going to give us our number fives, then we're going to give our number fours and number threes, and so on, all the way to our top horror movies of all time up to this date. So we'll be doing it annually.
And also, just to add quickly, if I can, it's mainly
Mhm.
horror games, but we have added a little bit of atmospheric games can also apply.
Yeah, because the scope of horror games is kind of
Because
like,
yeah,
it's fairly broad. You can include sort of like, not psychological horror as such, but more sort of like tension and suspense and sort of like foreboding atmospheres. Um, all right, well, I think it comes as no surprise that my number 5 pick is the Resident Evil remaster in, I think it's 2014 by Capcom. Um, so if those of you who haven't played the game or have no idea what that game is all about, it takes place in Raccoon City. You have a choice to take on the role of either a STARS team member, Chris Redfield, or Jill Valentine, and they've been trapped in this sort of mansion, and they have to sort of get out of the mansion. But there is betrayals and murder and bloodshed and all that kind of,
it's been remade so many times, Pete. So this is the 2014 one. I'm trying to remember it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it originally came out in 1990 something, or
Yeah,
2002
and
maybe.
there was one on there was a Nintendo version as well that came later, and then there was a remake. I'm just trying to remember exactly which remake.
Yeah. So this is, I think it's a remake of the remake. Well,
Okay.
I would say remaster because it wasn't really a from the ground up remake as such. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was a remaster on GameCube, and then it came out on Xbox in 2014. So I mean, you can either pick the GameCube version or the Xbox one. It really doesn't matter because it's the same sort of level of remaster, sort of. So, but the reason why I've chosen this one is just because of the setting,
Yep.
the early use of zombies and the sort of the classic sort of kind of like zombie, and
It was the first kind of zombie game that I remember. There might have been other ones that have come out before. I don't think so. Though. But it was the first one I remember
yeah.
coming out.
Yeah, totally. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the setting, being trapped in a mansion and
Hmm.
having to, work your way out and stuff like that. And then the story gets sort of it gets kind of interesting, and you wonder what's actually going on and who's betrayed the group and that sort of stuff. Very, very, um, very, very cool title. Very traditional style gameplay as well. It's not sort of first person or third person. It's
Did it still have the static backgrounds in the remake?
yes, it's static backgrounds and a locked camera.
Yeah.
So it chooses just the angle of the camera for you, and you have to traverse through the level that way. So yeah, that's Resident Evil Remastered 2014. That's my number 5 pick.
Okay. Okay. For me, the number 5 pick, The Last of Us Part One.
Okay,
I haven't played Part Two. There's a lot of reasons why, but I've
that's a podcast in itself, really, isn't it?
it's another podcast on itself. The Last of Us Part One. Very good game in a lot of ways. Good story, good characters, good voice acting, good world
Yeah,
building. But it also has some very scary moments. Not when they're outside in the daylight, obviously, which they are sometimes. But there's certain periods of the game where you can't see anything, and there's these clicker enemies in particular.
yeah.
And it's very scary, especially if you go all out and you play it in the dark. And I found that those parts of the games were really, I was just like, oh, I was dreading them. I was dreading playing them.
Hmm.
So, though it's not a horror game per se, it has certain horror elements regarding the virus because they're not zombies in The Last of Us. Did you ever play The Last of Us, Pete? Have you ever played that?
I've never played it. I've watched a. I wouldn't call it sort of like a game movie, but like I watched someone actually playing it, and um, yeah, it was really, really engaging. It was really good. Um, I think it was made a lot more um, sort of poignant and vibrant because there was a young girl in there,
Mm,
and that sort of fear of um, a precious life, if you like, at risk of being snuffed out. And you had a sort of a father figure, even though he wasn't the father.
yeah, yeah, Joel.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, Joel. Yeah, it was a nice little duo sort of action sort of set piece, and yeah, as you say, it can be classified as a horror because there are a lot of horror elements, and the atmosphere itself is very grim, and
yeah, and there's a lot of traversal in dark areas. I don't really want to spoil it for anyone because it is the kind of game where you really don't want it spoiled because it's a very really heavy. But there's a couple of deaths in there you wouldn't expect as well, quite horrific as well.
yeah,
Um, which most games don't normally do. I'm talking about kids stuff like that. You don't normally see that stuff, but they do go there.
yeah,
Um, and it does have an atmosphere of its own. There is a lot. There is a lot of dread in the world because it's another post-apocalyptic world. But of course, it's held together by the two main characters and their budding relationship as they become a surrogate father and daughter duo.
mm,
But there's still a lot of dread going on. It's not a nice world they're in. There's not that much hope. Kind of like she's the cure for the virus. So there is that kind of desperation, and there's a decent amount of gore, especially you play as Joel for the majority of the game, and if Joel's caught by one of these clickers, you get a insta death animation where it
yeah,
bites into his neck. So it's all pretty gory. So it's not for the faint of heart. And during the underground, they're underground a lot in a lot of subways and stuff, so you can't see much. There is that tension there where you can just hear stuff,
yeah,
and then you have to do the classic throwing stuff to kind of distract them, stuff like that. So it's stealth. You can't run in there with a gun. I believe you could build a shiv, and that's the only way that could protect you if you built a shiv. But it had
okay.
limited uses, so you had to like craft these shivs, and that was your only protection against these clickers. I think they were called. Um,
So
so yeah,
it's very sort of survival horror-y type sort of
yeah,
thriller.
you had to scavenge for parts so that you could build these things, so you could cause distractions to get past.
Right.
But there was action, there was flat out action in it as well, but there was also stealth elements, especially with these kind of clicker enemies, because the clicker enemies
Yeah.
couldn't see you. You see, so
Right.
it was based all upon sound and stuff like that. So yeah, like I say, technically not a horror game, but certainly horror elements. So that's my number five. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great choice. Great choice. So my number four, I dare say this is probably on your list as well.
Well, Pete, your first one's already on my list. The number five is already on my. It's technically, you'll see, it's not exactly the same, but technically it's the same. It's the
Okay.
way it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my number four is Alien Isolation.
Right. I'd say don't talk about that one too much.
Okay. Um, this
Yeah.
this was a desperate attempt to revive the Alien game franchise, because I think there was a lot of attempts before. Well, I say a lot. There was a couple of attempts beforehand with, I think we had like a couple of Alien versus Predator before this, and I
The Colonial Marines as well. The train wreck that was.
yeah, and this was successful as fuck, basically, because it is just one alien, and you play the daughter Amanda Ripley. You play Amanda Ripley, the daughter of
Yeah.
Ellen Ripley, and yeah, you basically have to sort of work your way out of a very sticky situation. Um, so that's, I mean, like it came out in 2014 by Creative Assembly. Well done, team. That was absolutely fantastic game. Um,
Funny thing is that they were known as they were strategy game designers. They weren't
all
known
right.
at all. Yeah, they weren't known at all for doing any kind of horror games or stealth games. They made strategy games on the PC. In fact, I think that's all they've made is strategy games, other than dipping into the Alien once, and that's it. And
Well, well, that's fair play to them then. Really, it's the same with this Lies of P game.
mm,
The makers of Lies of P, they were literally known for making mobile games, and
that's right. Yeah,
I think it was Microsoft that gave them a whole bunch of money and said, yeah, go for it. And it's very highly critically acclaimed, that Lies of P. Anyway, yes. So that's Alien Isolation. We won't go into too much depth, because you'll be finishing off that at some point.
yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. So my number four, but this is quite funny, is Bioshock. I'm going to keep that one short as well. Just hinting, I might have to keep my Bioshock a little short.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I played this on a recommendation of you, Pete. Because when it came
Mm.
out, it was one of those games that I can't tell you exactly why I didn't play it when it came out. I can't give you a real reason. I just didn't. It just kind of flew past. Even though I knew that it was from the makers of a PC game called System Shock 2, which I
Spiritual successor to, yeah.
yeah, which I'd heard great things about System Shock 2. But again,
Yeah.
I never played it because it only came out on the PC, I think, unless it did get a console release, and I don't remember. Anyway, so my Bioshock, I played a little bit of Bioshock based on you, and I did enjoy it. My only issue is I, it was like a retro game because the mechanics and everything were, I'd say, maybe nowadays a bit lacking, but at the time they were fine. But
Mm.
nowadays we're a bit lacking. So for me, unfortunately, I kind of did it backwards, and I thought it was very atmospheric, but
Yeah.
I did struggle with the actual gameplay aspects because I did
All
it
right.
in a reverse order. But I thought the atmosphere was very good, and part of me kind of wishes I would have stuck to it. And of course, there's nothing stopping me from going back and playing them. I still own the collection, so I can go back, and maybe I will sometime. But yeah, that's my number four. I told you I'll keep it short because I think there's an essay coming soon. So
There is. Okay.
yeah,
I might as well just say it. There is, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so my number three pick. This might be a slight surprise to you. I don't know.
Okay.
This is a game that came out in 1999 by
Ooh,
Team Silent.
Team Silent,
Yes, I think I've got that company.
1999.
I think I got that company right. Silent Hill.
Oh yes, the first one, not the second one.
The
The first
first
one.
one, yeah. It just so atmospheric, so amazing.
Yeah, it's all the
It
mist, isn't it? It's all the mist. There was all mist in the town, wasn't it? Because I've seen the. Believe it or not, I haven't played them, but I've seen the film with
Yeah.
Sean Bean in it. I've seen
Oh,
the film.
oh God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But it basically follows the story of Harry Mason, who wakes up from being unconscious due to a car crash. Daughter Cheryl is missing. So he sets out on a journey into an eerie town called Silent Hill to find her. And he stumbles upon a cult conducting a ritual to revive a deity it worships. Harry discovers his daughter's true origin. So this goes from a fairly normal real life aspect to a very um, paranormal alternate universe. And it's got that Japanese horror vibe in spades, and
Mm, mm,
the whole sort of flow of the storyline is very creepy. It's very slow, and in between these sort of exposition dumps, you've got this traversal, as you said, in through a very foggy town, and that just sort of heightens that sense of fear and tension, and you hear the enemies before you see them, which is what I just loved basically. And of course, you have the very iconic Pyramid Head. I think that's what he's called. Um, who who
is it the
just
one where there's crying babies in it? Am I getting it? Is that correct?
I think there was, yeah, there would have been, I think, here and there, especially when you go. I think there's like a level where you go through like a mental hospital and
Or a
stuff like
school
that,
or something? Yeah,
and a
yeah.
school, yeah. um yeah, just like a very iconic game, and again, that's highly recommended. So that's my number three.
That's good stuff. Okay. Um, my number three is Resident Evil One, the original one,
Okay.
the original PlayStation one. The reason why I've chosen, because yeah, you could have chosen one of the remakes like you did, and there's all different merits for it. But I think the reason why I've gone with the original is probably based because I was younger, of course,
Mm,
and it was probably my first. It was the first game that I probably would classify as horror. Um,
yeah,
and a big thing, and you've kind of mentioned it before, a big thing for me that made that so scary was the camera angles
yeah,
because of the static camera angles. So you'd hear enemies or you'd see enemies, not well, sorry, or you'd hear enemies or hear the footsteps, stomping around,
yeah,
and they'd just appear in the screen because they were there the whole time, but you can't see them.
yeah.
And then I remember stuff like, do you remember the dogs jumping through the windows and all the bats and everything, and they do all these jump
Oh
scares.
God, yeah. Fuck, it scared the shit out of me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even though the graphics, of course, and the voice acting was very, very. You go back and listen to the voice acting now. I mean, that's things of memes. Some of
Ah,
the voice acting.
don't open that door.
And do you want to? Yeah, exactly. Do you want to know something else? And I don't know how many people have seen this. It probably is on YouTube. I'll have to have a look. The
Yeah.
first Resident Evil PlayStation had a live action scenes as it loaded up.
The intro, you mean?
Yeah, live
Yeah,
action.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that was great. That was a.
And it was incredibly. It was as campy as you can imagine. It was
Oh
live
yeah,
action. And then you had the voice, of course, going Resident Evil.
yeah,
Um, so it's my first horror game. I considered it a horror game. I don't know about the atmosphere so much. I don't know. Maybe a little bit, but it was the fact for me the camera angles. The camera angles, just the way that they designed the camera angles in a certain way, so that enemies could always jump scare you more or less,
yeah.
or a zombie would grab you from behind, and there'd be nothing you could really do about it initially because you couldn't see it, and it was designed totally around that. Certainly the first half. I think the second half of the game maybe became a bit more kind of action focused, didn't it? Because you got better weapons and stuff like that, and then a lot of it was about solving puzzles. But
Yeah.
certainly the first half for me that was much more horrible.
It
So
it
yeah.
it does start very slow,
Mm.
and then yeah, you're right. It does sort of like pick up a little bit. But what I can't really get over, bruv, is the voice acting, especially
Oh,
Jill's.
it's stuff of legend now, isn't it?
Oh,
To
it's
be
so
honest.
bad. If you want to know how bad it is, yeah, just YouTube it. You were almost a Jill sandwich, which is an iconic line in the in the games universe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Um, yeah, so that's my number three. Yeah, Resident Evil, the original one on the PlayStation, the first one.
okay. Well, moving on to number two. My number two. You probably won't be shocked by this. Um, Resident Evil 7.
Okay, so Pete, before we continue, I want to say that that is also my number two.
Okay.
So we
All
can
right.
we can double discuss this one because I've got
Yeah.
that too as well.
Okay. So the reason why I love this so much is because after Resident Evil 6, which was kind of widely, I wouldn't say panned.
No, it wasn't good. No, I didn't like it at all. I played an hour of it and then that was it for me. I was done with it.
Yeah, but because it was more of a sort of an arcade and it wasn't really much horror to number 6 at all.
Yep.
Um, so Capcom decided to start again. They wanted to sort of bring that fear back, and they tried their hardest, and they went for sort of like a redneck horror, actually. If you just sort of like try to simplify it,
Chainsaw Massacre vibe, Pete. It had
Chainsaw Massacre vibe, absolutely,
yeah,
yeah, or
yeah.
like what's it, Cabin in the Woods or something like that.
Yeah, and
Wrong Turn,
the
shit like that.
crazies, yeah, the crazies and all stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So it's set in a sort of southern United States. I think it was Texas or something like that, outback of some weird ass state. It it features a new protagonist called Ethan Winters, and
Yep.
he's searching for his missing wife Mia, and it leads him to a derelict plantation mansion occupied by essentially what is an infected family, although you don't really sort of. Well, I guess you realise that straight away. I don't know. The reason why I love this so much is because just the setting, the graphics,
Mm,
very sort of creepy and foreboding. What I really loved about it was the VHS tape sequences.
that was good. Yeah,
It's yeah, specifically the first one with the team of three people who go to
with the
visit the
cameraman.
mansion. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
one featuring one of the characters is the one of the producers
Oh, really? Okay.
of the game. Yeah. So yeah, just like it sort of it heightened that sense as well, and I loved the dynamic of having because you play the cameraman who's filming them going through this place
Yeah,
and
at the start. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, and I loved that idea because you have to go through it again and you sort of you learn a couple of things here and there. Um, and so yeah, as the story evolves, you go through and you just you find out what's happened, and it was a return to form. I think it was a really excellent reset, and I loved the setting.
I think yeah. For me, I think it tried to blend a number of different horror things. It did keep the whole Resident Evil kind of thing, and then it kind of blended parts of possession. So you can say parts of like stuff like The Exorcist was in it with the you coming across the girlfriend and she's being turned into not a demon per se, but similar to kind of like this crazed different kind of personality. And she bite your hand off or something, didn't she? She bites your hand off or stuff like that, or she cuts your hand off and
Yes, no,
stuff.
she chainsaws it off, I believe, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So you got that element of the kind of possession of of your girlfriend, which has happened in a number of horror films. Evil Dead did it as well, and then you've got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff with the crazy hillbillies and a creepy old lady who doesn't move and just watches you all the time.
that was
Which
creepy. That
yeah,
was fucking creepy.
and there's obviously without we'll try not to spoil it in case somebody does want to play it, but that ends up being a bit more than you think it is with the old lady. So It jumps around a little bit. Like I say, there's possession elements. There's Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of elements. And then a bit later on in the game, it kind of opens up a little bit more, and it actually goes in a direction that I won't get into because it's a really nice little spin
Hmm.
that I myself was really shocked for when it happened. I loved it, and I remember telling you, Pete, because you watched me play it. I believe I think I was streaming it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when this kind of twist happens halfway through the game, I was like, oh wow, I really wasn't expecting this. But I'd say maybe the tone changes in the second after the twist. The tone changes a little bit, so it becomes a little bit more like your Resident Evil of old. Not action so much, but biohazard stuff and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And then the more recognizable premises such as Umbrella and the virus and all that stuff starts coming into play. But the first half of the game is very different than any other Resident Evil. And like I say, it's jumping around from possession to crazy redneck hillbillies and stuff like that. Atmosphere is great, graphics was great, voice acting. Ethan was maybe not the most charismatic guy, but I suppose he didn't have to be, really. I
No.
suppose.
Yeah.
Um, but the characters are quite well done. And like I say, yeah, there's a big twist, which a twist that works because a lot of times I don't. But I thought the twist worked pretty well. Caught me off guard, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, I guess that's our number two, and yeah, definitely the best. It's the most. It's based upon because I think I know what both our number ones are. It's the most recent horror game I think successful for both of us that we've really enjoyed. Certainly the most recent one,
Yeah.
and of course its sequel's Out the Village, which I haven't played, so I can't actually say how
You
good or
haven't
bad
played
they.
it.
I haven't played the Village yet.
This-
No, I own it because I bought it. I bought it on sale about 2 months ago, so it's on that list. So I will get around to it. But I haven't played it.
Because I was wanting to say, and this is no spoiler, so don't worry. But
Okay.
what really sort of like puzzled me as I was playing the seventh one was like he's got his hand chopped off and he's gotten beaten and battered and thrown about the room, and he just gets up as if it's nothing, and I'm just thinking, what is going on?
His
Um,
reaction, his reactions to stuff was a bit dulled, and you just wonder if this guy even realise what's going on. That's what I mean. It was a little weird, wasn't it? He didn't react that much.
well, yeah,
He didn't react much.
yeah, and I'm just wondering, right? Okay, so he's a bit of a badass. There's something about him, and of course you learn why in the next one. So yeah, they're a fucking amazing story, I've got to say.
It was really good. No, it was. It certainly was a return to form. It because as you said, Resident Evil 6 for me was the worst one. I didn't mind 5, but I did recognise that 5. I liked 5 in co-op.
Hmm.
We even me and you played that co-op, so I liked 5 in co-op. But
It was,
as a traditional Resident Evil game, no, it wasn't horror, was it? It was action.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, you could see it turning that way
yeah,
towards the
yeah.
style of number six. Um, all right, so let's move on to our number ones.
Okay, Pete, let me go. Let me go grab a drink or so. I'll be back in half an hour. No.
So it comes as no surprise that my number one choice is BioShock.
Yeah, it had to be.
Yeah. Where do I even begin with this? In this game, in it just, I can't even think of the right descriptive words for it. It just. I am just looking for the word. Hang on.
It's okay. It's all right. Take your time.
Um, it just, it just, it blew me away because the story, and as you know, I play games because of the story,
Yeah.
and this just did not let me down. And it was, it's 1960. A plane crashes in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you play a guy called Jack, who's the only survivor of that plane crash. And he's lucky enough when he resurfaces from that crash to be in front of what looks like a lighthouse in the middle of the ocean. So it's like, well, fuck is this? So he goes to the lighthouse. He goes down and he finds this bathysphere, which takes him to the underground, underwater city of Rapture.
Yeah.
Um, and it was the brainchild of a chap called Andrew Ryan, who thought that he could build a so-called paradise of free will, um, where an artist could paint what he wanted, and a doctor or a surgeon or that could sort of experiment without any fear of reprisals and all that kind of thing. And what ends up happening involves little girls, and these little girls are vessels for what's called Adam.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you want the most amount of Adam, you have to kill these girls. So that's this sort of conundrum, if you like, of the whole game, of whether you want to kill the girl or
It's a big choice, isn't it? A big moral choice,
it
isn't it?
is
That.
a big more choice. And it was the one that I think it was like a first for gaming. I know you mentioned before with Last of Us that it
Yeah.
involves that sort of element, but this really was, that sort of choice. It just throws that choice in your face, and you don't expect it. And um, yeah, so it was just amazing. I mean, like the end boss wasn't great, but it didn't matter because the story was the one, and
And what year did it? What year was it originally out? Because it came out on the original Xbox, did it not?
well, it was 2007, so I think it was 360.
360.
That was 360 era, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
By 2K Australia and Boston, and yeah, I mean, like we've spoken about this in a previous podcast, but yeah, this
Yeah.
really was just one of the greatest games I've ever played. Now, you can technically call it a horror movie, horror game, even though it's kind of more of a sort of a first person shooter and a thriller. But there are a lot of horror moments peppered in to that, much like The Last of Us.
It's the atmosphere, isn't it? It's the atmosphere of being, at least from what I took for it. I only played probably the first half of the game, I'm going to say.
Yeah,
But even I felt the atmosphere of going down into this broken place. Nothing works. You don't know what's going on. You don't know where you are. You don't know anything about anything. And
yeah.
then slowly you get clues and you start to piece it together ever so slowly, bit by bit by bit. And that's, I think, where the atmosphere really builds up. But obviously, I don't know what happens. Obviously, maybe the second half of the game, where I guess you've got a bit more knowledge, and does it become more action based in like this, the latter parts of the game?
Well, it just continues on as it is, as the story unfolds. You understand more and more about how the city fell apart, and you just get this feeling all the way through that it was inevitable that it was going to fall apart. It was just something that could never have worked. It was like, here
Mm.
you've got this guy who's a business magnate who's got like, you know as much money as you want, and he spunks all of it into this underwater city, and um he claims that it's a city of free will, yet there's the antagonist who's called, well, I shouldn't really give it away, but in an attempt to quell him, in an attempt to silence him, he abandons his morals, and he starts to become a, what's the word, a dictator, a
Mm.
tyrant, and stuff like that. So um, it was just fascinating. It's a sort of like a psychological fascination involved here, and the fact that the story gets dripped fed to you via these audio diaries. And I'd always stop what I was doing whenever I came across an audio diary and just listened to what was going on. The voice acting was fantastic, the music was absolutely brilliant, it was perfect, very period based,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know what more I can say about it. You know,
Well,
just
it
legend.
got. I remember it got lots of fantastic ratings. It was generally universally loved. I'm not sure if I've ever
Yeah.
seen somebody who really had generally a bad thing to say about it. Like it, I don't know if it won any. I'd have to check, but I don't know if it won any Game of the Years. But I'm sure it must have been up there.
Well, it
Um,
won one of the most prestigious awards, which was a BAFTA award.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
for I think it was for the storyline and the just the barefaced boldness of that sort of mechanic of whether to save the little sisters.
Well,
So
they've been people have been wanting a new Bioshock for quite a while, haven't they?
yeah.
I know that as we said in one of the earlier podcasts, you didn't like the third game. So whether or not that damaged the reputation, if I don't know, the third game. How well did the third game? Did the third game still sell well? Do you think?
I think it did, but I initially, but I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I just didn't like the setting.
Mm,
There wasn't that sort of claustrophobia
yeah, yeah.
essence to it, and I just
It
felt
was
like
so it was so different. It was like night and day, really, wasn't it? It wasn't anything
it was literally night
remotely
and
like.
day, literally, because you're at the bottom of the ocean in the first two, and then the third one you're up in the clouds.
Yeah.
Um, and it had such a cheap ending. The third one, second one is it's pretty good. It's a nice follow up.
Do you play
It
the same
expands
character
the
in
role.
in the second one? Do you play the same character? Is it a direct sequel
It's
from
not.
the
It's
first?
not. No, you play a different character.
Ah, okay.
Um, because what happens at the end of the first one, again, I won't spoil it. So yeah,
Yeah.
just absolutely amazing, brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. So let's just move on before I just sort
Just
of stop rambling there.
yeah, yeah. We have to get to bed at some point. Right. So my number one, again, not going to be a surprise to you, Pete, but to those listening, is Alien Isolation.
Right.
Um, Now, obviously, at the start of this, I said I was a big horror film fan. Alien is a horror film. Aliens is an action film, and I won't hear any other people say it. But the first Alien, I actually prefer to Aliens. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of abuse for saying that, but I like both a lot. But I prefer Alien because of the atmosphere. Because of the
Right.
atmosphere.
Yeah. Same. Same.
So for them to make a game about Alien and not aliens is quite rare because most of the games that have come out, Color Marines or some of the old arcade games, are generally more focused on aliens and
Yeah.
the Marines and the badasses and everything. Whereas in Alien Isolation, you're just some, with all due respect to Amanda, some silly engineer who's got no combat skills and doesn't know anything about anything. She's just an engineer, right?
Yeah.
So you're literally thrown in there um, with no. You eventually find a little pistol, which of course does nothing to the alien. And I will try to keep it short because otherwise we will be here all night. Um, the pacing, the pacing is very good
yeah.
because even though anyone who's playing the game knows that the alien's going to show up, right? It's called Alien Isolation. There's an alien on the cover, right? You know the alien, so that they can't surprise you with the alien. They can't do that because you know the alien's going to be there. But what they do is they introduce you very slowly, similar to what you said about the Rapture. They go to the space station, the Sebastopol space station,
Yeah.
and it's a complete wreck. Nothing works. It's dark everywhere. There's virtually no power, and you're stranded there. Again, I won't do too many spoilers. And slowly, you have to find out what's going on, similar to Bioshock.
Well,
You
you
find
have to find out that there's a message, or no, the black box from the Nostromo.
from the Strummer, yeah. So it does actually follow on directly from the first film, Alien.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I should add that the voice actors are the actors from Alien. So Sigourney Weaver, Yaphet Kotto, Tom Skerritt,
Yeah.
they all play. Granted, it's not loads of lines, but they are technically in the game as voice actors voicing those characters. So it's quite high quality. Yeah, so you're there trying to find out what happened. I'm trying to find out what happened to Ripley. So that they discovered the black box, and they tell you to go and check the black box, and you go there with a couple of people from the company, right? So anyway, she gets stranded, and then slowly she's got to bring. You're fighting against a station almost as much as you are enemies, because again, not too many spoilers, but for the first couple of hours, and it is hours of the game, there's no enemies.
Yeah.
It's you trying to figure out how to get the station up and running. etc., etc. And there's little hints that something's watching you. There's the little tension starts to build, that you hear weird noises and stuff like that. And then eventually the alien shows up. And what makes this game so much more horrifying than anything else is the atmosphere is chock-a-block full. It's constantly there. And the sound I've never had a sound be so important in a game to me, because I played it with surround sound, so I could tell if the alien was in front of me or behind me or in the vents. And the thing running around
Yeah.
in the vents late at night, I'm playing this, and the thing's running around in the vents, scaring the absolute shit out of me. Make no mistake about it.
I, d-
Um,
I just want to chip in at this point.
yep.
Is the build up of the alien reveal? You get very complacent. You get used to this mechanic of going from A to B without any hindrances,
Hmm.
and you come round a corner and then bam, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
And it actually does that a number of times. A number of times it does the good old subverting your expectations, because you think you're safe, and then there will be just a scene, boom, out of nowhere, and it will appear, and you'll feel trapped. You'll feel kind of cornered because it's set up that way, of course. And but the biggest thing, the why it's so scary is the first game where I felt hunted,
yeah,
and the AI, though not perfect, and maybe this is where them being a strategy game designer really worked well for them. The AI was really good, not
Oh, it was
perfect.
cutting edge.
It acted like it was hunting you.
Yeah,
If you made a noise, it went and checked it out. It wouldn't go in a circle. Like so many of these games you see, like Metal Gear Solid and all these stealth games. We know how it works. It's quite funny. The guards go in patterns, and they
yeah,
continue the patterns forever, and that's how you get by. This thing, very small patterns. I'm not saying it was zero. I'm not saying it didn't every now and again repeat. I'm not saying that, but significantly more advanced than anything else. So for the majority of the game, you are running away from this alien who is hunting you at all times. Second half of the game, you do start to get some equipment, and I do think the game changes a bit
yeah,
in the second half of the game. It becomes less scary because you get certain gadgets, weapons, etc., that are effective against the alien. It's still a threat, but less so.
yeah. You get like a
And
flamethrower, don't you? And it,
yeah, flamethrower, and then you can build gadgets. Again, there is a crafting system and a scavenging system, just like The Last of Us, where
yeah,
you build like distractions and stuff like that. Um, and it's just so, even if I wasn't an Aliens fan, I'd probably still like it. But the fact that I am an Aliens fan just added that extra thing. It's by far, like, when we were making this list, Pete, I did say to you my number one is kind of so way out on its own. It's not even close, and for me, it really isn't.
yeah,
Like, it's significantly the scariest game I've ever played. And the only drawback I'd say is the android enemies. Hey, it's aliens, right? They've got to have android. That stuff is. I wish they weren't. Now, I understand why they're there, because they've got to pad the game out, but that stuff is not great. And the second half of the game is less exciting as the first half of the game, because you're more able. So the alien does not get more powerful, so to speak, right? But you get more powerful as the game goes on.
yeah.
The alien stays the same kind of thing. So honestly, I'd be here at night as well. I can't say enough about it. I just remember, honestly, dude, like, you're hiding in a locker, the alien's prowling around. I'm legitimately just scared. I'm scared to open the locker because I know he's going to come out again, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? How do I complete this game? I'm too scared to get out of the locker, and I just sit there and I sit there and I sit there, and then eventually I muster up enough courage to get out,
To,
and then
to peek your head out, yeah,
yep. And also, one last thing: the alien AI, as I said, is great, but also it 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 does things as it would happen in a horror movie. For example, you can be if you're brave enough, you can crawl around in vents, and in most games, you think, the AI doesn't go in. The AI won't go in events. No, they're just on the outside. If I go in the events, I'm going to be safe in it. No, it comes in events.
does it?
It will, yeah. And Pete, it will grab you from behind and kill you. So think about this for a
Yeah.
second. You're crawling in a vent, you think it's safe, and then you're just grabbed from behind and insta killed.
Oh, mate.
I jumped out of my seat the first time that happened to me.
I really have to point out the beauty of the AI system with the Alien, because I mean, it knew where you were, but it was the game that deciding whether to sort of get you or not. And it knew that it couldn't get you if it didn't see you going into a hiding place. So
Yep,
it would just stalk around you, and
yep.
it would maybe go away sort of like 50 yards away, and you'd get you'd get sort of bored, and then you sort of like creep out, and then it would just come back. But like when you run into a locker and you close the door, and it
Yep.
comes into the room and it stands right outside the locker.
And you've got to hold your breath, and like I think you've got to pull back on the left stick or something to hold
Yeah,
your
sort of
breath.
lean back, and you don't know whether he's going to rip that door off and slash your neck or something. Um, Also, there's one element which I really loved about the Kinect, where originally when the first came out, when the Kinect was still going, um, if you made a sound in the room that you were playing in real life, it would hear
You heard it.
it heard it.
That's great.
Yeah, right. So you can imagine all these people sort of like playing the game in their home and sort of like making a noise, and then they get they
And
get
then their mum comes in and says, "What are you doing?" Or "Your dinner's ready," and then the alien hears and then jumps on you.
yeah, uh, just absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
And there's one last thing regarding atmosphere and tension. And this is a weird thing because I raged at this, but then I also realised it added to the tension. There's the save system is very old school, so you can't save it. You can't autosave. You have to
Yeah.
save at these little terminals, these little phone boxes. But what that means is that if you've saved a long time ago, and let's say you're just around the corner from the next save spot, which you might not know is even there, of course,
Mm,
and then you get killed, you have to do it again. Now, that's very annoying, but it also adds to the whole, oh God, I don't want to get caught. I don't want him to see me. I don't want him to kill me now because then I've got to go back.
yeah.
It adds more tension.
But it takes time as well. Even if you do get there
Oh, yeah.
and you put your card in, and it's like bing,
Yep.
bing. It's like hurry the fuck up. You know.
And you might think, oh, surely once the animation starts, the alien can't kill you. Not true. I went to one of there's lots of computers terminals, right, where you have to read files and stuff.
Yeah.
I went to a terminal file. I was in the middle of reading it, and then I just was just killed from behind. So even though you think that, oh no, I've accessed the terminal, so now you see the computer screen, so you think you're safe, right? Because in most games you'd be safe,
In most games you are,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
But you get
yeah,
used to that mechanic, and that's
yep,
what they play against you. Yeah,
yep.
it's
But
genius.
you're not safe. They can kill you at any time, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's an easy number one for me. I wish they'd make a sequel. It doesn't look like they are, unfortunately.
Mm.
Certainly my favorite Aliens game, my favorite horror game. Um, but I also will not acknowledge that I think they took quite a lot from a game called Outlast, I think, which I haven't played, but I've heard about. I
Outlast
think
was really good. It
a
nearly
lot of
made my
mechanics were
list,
taken,
actually.
weren't they? A lot of mechanics were taken from Outlast, like the whole locker
Yeah,
things and everything, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
It did nearly make my list. There was a couple of other titles that nearly made my list as well. There was a game for the PC. Don't ask me when it came out. I think it was early 2000s. It was a game called Dracula.
Dracula. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I didn't really play it for much because I just got way too scared. Um, yeah, so that there was that, and then there was also the original RE4, which I really liked, and it's more of a
Do you mean
thriller.
the original one, not the one they just remade, not the remake from this year?
It's
Have
not
you
the
played that one?
remake. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't like the remake. It took something away from the
Okay.
original atmosphere. I don't know what it was. Don't ask me. But yeah, so that was nearly making the list. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a few RE titles in there, and that's just because they're the masters at what they do. Capcom, to be fair, that certain division know what they were doing.
And I know that people listen to this are going to have their own lists, and I can already hear some of the comments being like, "Oh, you didn't include Dead Space." I never played them, unfortunately.
Yeah, these
I,
are
I
games that we've played, guys.
Yeah, these are games that we've played. Dead Space, I'm sure, based upon everything I've heard, I probably would be there. And me personally, I am looking to get the remake when it drops in price a little bit. I'm actually going to pick that up and play it because I've heard so much about the originals being like the Event Horizon film. If anyone's remember they're kind of like that.
Yeah,
So
brilliant.
I'm sure that probably would be in my list, probably over some of the higher up ones. But yeah, this is just the games we've played. So hey, look, if anyone's got their own list, by all means, drop it in the comment section.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. Put
sure
your
that
lists on the comment section. I mean,
there's stuff we've missed. I'm sure.
um, a, a brilliant game that I watched but haven't played was Returnal, and
Oh,
Five Nights at Freddy's was kind of fun.
I remember that. Yeah, that was pretty scary, wasn't it? The Five Nights at Freddy's. I remember that.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
OG. Yeah.
and then of course we've got to talk. We can't not mention the whole PT trailer that only ended up being a trailer, but that was such a phenomenon, wasn't it?
Oh, it was fantastic.
Did you play
Absolutely.
that?
I didn't play it, but I've seen plenty of people play it. Uh, just literally, it's literally a corridor and
Yeah.
maybe a room or two. But it was what's his name from ex-member of Konami, Kojima,
Kojima.
Hideo
Yeah,
Kojima, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
just absolute genius demo. It's a shame it didn't get made into a
But it's meant to be Silent Hill, wasn't it? Remake.
yeah.
That's what I think it was meant to be leading to, Silent Hill.
But there are rumours. That
Well,
he's
that
going.
is made
It's going
made
to
up with them.
happen. Yes. Yes,
Mm.
it's a rumor mill at the moment. We have to wait and see at the end of this year. He said, "Is it end of this year or end of next year that he's going to make a big announcement?" I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
I might be completely behind the times there, but anyway,
Okay.
that wraps up our session.
Halloween. It's our Halloween episode, Pete. A couple of weeks early, but we thought we'd get it out nice and
Nice and early for everyone
ready.
else.
Yeah.
Our top five. So yeah, that's our top five. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks a lot. See you later, guys.
See ya.